The champagne flute felt cold against my fingertips as I watched my husband Marcus guide a stunning brunette through the country club's grand ballroom. His hand rested possessively on the small of her back, that familiar gesture he used to reserve for me. What he didn't know was that I recognized her immediately, not as his mistress, though that much was obvious from their body language, but as Vivian Chen, the ambitious marketing coordinator who'd been working in my department for the past 8 months. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Catherine, darling, there you are, Marcus called out, his voice carrying that artificial warmth he'd perfected for social gatherings. I want you to meet someone very special. This is Vivian Chen. She's absolutely brilliant, just secured a major partnership with the Riverside Development Group. I've been mentoring her career. Mentoring. The word hung in the air like expensive perfume, cloying and obvious. I extended my hand, watching Vivian's confident smile falter just slightly as our eyes met. How lovely to meet you, I said smoothly, noting the flash of recognition, then confusion, then barely concealed panic that crossed her features in rapid succession. Marcus has told me so much about his mentorship activities. Mrs. Thornton, Vivian stammered, her composure cracking. She knew exactly who I was now. Catherine Thornton, Chief Marketing Officer of Meridian Global, the company where she worked, the woman who'd approved her hiring, the woman who reviewed her performance quarterly, the woman whose husband she'd been sleeping with. Marcus, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension, beamed with pride. Vivian's going places. I told her she reminds me of you when you were starting out hungry, determined, willing to do whatever it takes to succeed. The irony was so thick I could have cut it with the butter knife from our dinner table. How fascinating, I replied, taking a slow sip of champagne. Tell me, Vivian, what exactly attracted you to the Riverside account? It's quite a departure from your usual portfolio. Her eyes darted to Marcus, seeking support. He squeezed her shoulder encouragingly, completely missing the way her face had gone pale beneath her expertly applied makeup. I saw an opportunity to expand our reach into luxury real estate marketing, she managed, her voice steadier now but her hands trembling slightly around her wine glass. The demographics aligned perfectly with our target expansion goals. I nodded thoughtfully. Interesting, because I don't recall approving any expansion into luxury real estate. In fact, I'm quite certain I explicitly stated during last quarter's strategy meeting that we'd be focusing exclusively on tech sector clients for the remainder of the fiscal year. Marcus laughed. That dismissive sound I'd grown to detest over our 12 years of marriage. Oh, Catherine, always so cautious. Sometimes you have to take risks to see real growth. I've been encouraging Vivian to think bigger, beyond the limitations of her current role. Current role. The phrase confirmed what I'd suspected for weeks now. Marcus had been setting up his mistress for something, a promotion, a new position, perhaps even my job. The pieces were falling into place with crystalline clarity. Well, I said, setting down my glass with deliberate care. I look forward to hearing more about this Riverside opportunity at Monday's executive meeting. I'm sure the rest of the marketing leadership team will be equally surprised by this initiative. Vivian's face went from pale to green. Marcus, finally sensing something amiss, frowned slightly. Actually, that might be premature. The deal isn't quite finalized. Oh, but Marcus, I interrupted, turning to him with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. If Vivian has already committed company resources to this partnership, as you seem to be implying, then it absolutely needs to be discussed with the executive team. We wouldn't want any unauthorized projects moving forward, would we? The board is very particular about proper channels. The board. I was on the board. Marcus knew this. But in his arrogance, he'd clearly forgotten that his wife wasn't just another executive. She was one of the people who could make or break careers at Meridian Global. I should go, Vivian said quickly, setting down her barely touched wine. I just remembered I have an early call tomorrow. On Saturday? I asked innocently. How dedicated? Though I don't recall seeing any weekend meetings on the marketing department calendar. She fled. There was no other word for it. Vivian Chen, the woman my husband had just proudly introduced as his brilliant protégé, practically ran across the ballroom floor, her heels clicking an urgent staccato against the marble. Marcus watched her go, confusion and irritation warring on his face. That was rude, Catherine. You embarrassed her. Did I? I picked up my champagne again, swirling the golden liquid thoughtfully. I thought I was simply asking reasonable questions about a company initiative I knew nothing about. Isn't that what a CMO should do? You know what I mean. Your tone. My tone, I repeated softly, was professional. Which is more than I can say for introducing your mistress to your wife at the club. The color drained from his face. Around us, the ambient noise of the gala continued laughter, clinking glasses, the string quartet playing something light and forgettable, but in our little bubble, silence reigned. I don't know what you're talking about, he finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. Don't you? I set down my glass again, this time turning to face him fully. Marcus, I've known about Vivian for 3 months. The late-night strategy sessions. The hotel charges on the credit card you thought I didn't monitor. The texts that come through at 2 in the morning that you think I don't hear. His jaw tightened. If you knew, why didn't you say anything? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Why indeed? I thought about all the reasons I'd stayed silent, shock at first, then hurt, then anger, and finally, cold calculation. Marcus had made a fatal error. He'd chosen to betray me with someone who worked in my company, in my department, under my authority. That wasn't just infidelity. It was stupidity. Because, I said quietly, I wanted to see how far you'd go, how bold you'd become. And tonight, Marcus, you showed me exactly what I needed to know. What's that supposed to mean? I smiled then, genuinely. It means that on Monday morning, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to investigate this Riverside deal that you've been encouraging my employee to pursue without authorization. I'm going to review Vivian's personnel file, her project approvals, her expense reports, and I'm going to let the consequences unfold naturally. You can't use your position to punish her because you're jealous, Marcus hissed, stepping closer. That's abuse of power. Jealous? The word almost made me laugh. Oh, Marcus, I'm not jealous. I'm disappointed. In you, certainly, but also in her. Vivian showed real promise when I hired her. She had talent, creativity, genuine potential. But instead of developing her skills and building her career on merit, she decided to sleep with the CFO's husband and bypass proper protocols. That's not ambition. That's a shortcut. And shortcuts always have consequences. His face flushed red. I'm the CFO's husband? Is that all I am to you? Right now? I met his eyes steadily. Yes, because that's clearly all I am to you. A stepping stone for your girlfriend's career advancement. I walked away before he could respond, moving through the crowd with practiced grace. People called out greetings, complimented my dress, asked about upcoming marketing campaigns. I responded automatically, my mind already 3 steps ahead, planning Monday's moves like a chess grandmaster contemplating an endgame. What Marcus didn't know, what Vivian certainly didn't know, was that I'd already begun building my case weeks ago. The moment I'd discovered their affair, I'd started documenting everything. Not out of vindictiveness, but out of necessity. Because in corporate America, you couldn't just fire someone for sleeping with your husband. But you could fire them for violating company policy, for pursuing unauthorized business deals, for misrepresenting their authority to external partners, and Vivian had done all 3. The Riverside Development Group was real enough. But the major partnership Marcus had bragged about? That was fiction. I knew because I'd called Riverside CEO myself 2 weeks ago, posing as a routine verification for our corporate due diligence. They'd been approached by someone from Meridian Global. Yes, but no deal had been signed. More importantly, they'd been told that this person had full authority to negotiate on behalf of the company. Vivian had misrepresented her position. That alone was grounds for immediate termination. But I wasn't going to fire her. Not yet, because firing was too quick, too clean. Vivian had thought she was clever, thought she could use her relationship with Marcus to leapfrog over her colleagues and bypass the hard work of actually earning advancement. She needed to learn that actions had consequences. That sleeping with the boss's husband didn't actually give you power, it just made you vulnerable. I reached my car in the parking lot, sliding into the driver's seat of my Mercedes with relief. Through the windshield, I could see Marcus emerging from the club, his phone pressed to his ear, calling Vivian, no doubt, to warn her, to strategize, to panic. Let them panic. My own phone buzzed. A text from Diana Wu, my VP of Marketing and closest confidant at the company. She was one of the few people who knew about Marcus and Vivian, though not about my plans. Saw you leave the gala early. Everything okay? I typed back, perfect. Monday's going to be interesting. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? I need to discuss some personnel matters. Her response came immediately. Your place or mine? Mine. 9 a.m. Bring your files on the Q3 marketing initiatives. Diana would understand the subtext. Q3 initiatives included the tech sector focus that Vivian had apparently decided to ignore. She'd have all the documentation I needed to build an airtight case. The drive home took 20 minutes through darkened suburban streets. Our house, Marcus's and mine, though I'd paid for most of it with my signing bonus when Meridian Global had recruited me 5 years ago, loomed at the end of a cul-de-sac, all modern angles and expensive landscaping. I'd loved this house once. Now it just felt like a showcase, a hollow testament to a marriage that had died somewhere between Marcus's promotion to CFO 2 years ago and his first late-night emergency meeting with Vivian 3 months ago. Inside, I kicked off my heels and poured myself a real drink whiskey, neat and settled into my home office. This room was my sanctuary, lined with books on marketing strategy, business psychology, and corporate leadership. My computer hummed to life at a touch, and I pulled up the secure folder I'd been maintaining. Evidence. Months of it. Screenshots of texts I'd glimpsed on Marcus's phone. Credit card statements showing hotel charges. Calendar discrepancies where his schedule didn't match what he'd told me. Photos from the private investigator I'd hired, yes. I'd gone that far, showing Marcus and Vivian entering her apartment, his car parked there overnight, the two of them having intimate dinners at restaurants across the city. But the professional misconduct was what interested me most, because that's where I could act without it looking personal. That's where I could maintain the moral high ground while still extracting my revenge. I opened Vivian's personnel file, cross-referencing it with project records and client communications. The pattern was clear. Over the past 3 months, since her affair with Marcus had begun, Vivian's work had become increasingly erratic. Missed deadlines, covered up by vague excuses. Reports submitted with errors that her colleagues had to fix. Client meetings she'd claimed to attend, but which, according to calendar records, she'd actually skipped. And then there was the Riverside situation. I pulled up the email chain I'd archived. Vivian had reached out to Riverside's marketing director 6 weeks ago, claiming she was heading up Meridian Global's new luxury real estate division. She'd promised deliverables, timelines, and pricing that she had no authority to promise. She'd essentially created a fictional business arrangement and then tried to make it real after the fact. In any other context, with any other employee, I would have addressed this immediately. But with Vivian, I'd waited. I'd watched. I'd let her dig her own grave deeper with every unauthorized email, every false promise, every meeting where she'd misrepresented her position and authority. Because I needed this to be absolutely bulletproof. My phone rang. Marcus, of course. I let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times over the next hour, each time going to voicemail. Finally, a text appeared. "We need to talk. I'm staying at the club tonight. Coming home tomorrow to discuss this like adults." Adults. The irony wasn't lost on me. Adults didn't sneak around with their subordinates. Adults didn't use their spouse's employees as affair partners. Adults didn't try to advance their mistress's career through deception and protocol violations. I texted back, "Fine. We'll talk tomorrow afternoon. I have a morning meeting." Another text buzzed through. This one from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then paused. Unknown numbers usually meant someone trying to reach me without using official channels. "Mrs. Thornton? This is Vivian. Please, can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. I stared at the message for a long moment, considering my options. The smart play would be to ignore her, to maintain professional distance until Monday's reckoning. But something in me, curiosity, perhaps, or the desire to understand just how delusional she was, made me respond. "Call me. Now." My phone rang within seconds. "Mrs. Thornton." Vivian's voice was breathless, panicked. "Thank you for taking my call. I need to explain about tonight." "Explain what, exactly?" I kept my voice neutral, clinical. "That you're sleeping with my husband? I'm already aware. That you've been violating company policy? Also aware. That you misrepresented your authority to a potential client? Very much aware. So what, precisely, did you want to explain?" Silence on the other end, broken only by her shallow breathing. "Did Marcus know?" I asked suddenly. "Did he know that I'm your boss?" Yes, he knew. But he said it didn't matter, that you two kept your professional and personal lives separate. "Did he tell you I hired you?" I interrupted. "Did he mention that I personally reviewed your resume? That I was impressed by your portfolio from your previous agency? That I specifically requested you be brought in for an interview because I thought you had real talent?" More silence. "He didn't, did he?" I continued, my voice hardening. "Because if he had, you might have realized how spectacularly you were destroying your own career. You might have understood that sleeping with my husband wasn't a clever power move, it was career suicide." "I didn't know," she whispered. "At first, I didn't know you were married to him. He told me you were separated, that the divorce was almost final. By the time I realized he'd lied, I'd already... Already what? Fallen in love? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. Or already invested too much in what you thought was a useful connection?" "Both," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I know how that sounds. I know you have every right to hate me. But please, Mrs. Thornton, I'm begging you don't destroy my career over this. I'll end things with Marcus. I'll request a transfer to another department. I'll do whatever you need me to do." I should have felt triumph in that moment, hearing her grovel. Instead, I felt a strange sort of emptiness. This woman, this talented, ambitious woman who'd thrown away her integrity for a married man, wasn't my enemy. She was just another casualty of Marcus's ego, his need to feel powerful by manipulating younger women. "It's not about the affair," I said finally. "It's about the Riverside deal. You lied to a potential client about your authority. You promised deliverables without approval. You created an entire business arrangement that doesn't exist. That's not about personal feelings, Vivian. That's about professional misconduct that could expose the company to legal liability." "I can fix it," she said quickly. "I'll call Riverside Monday morning. Explain there was a miscommunication. Walk back everything I promised." "You'll do no such thing," I cut her off. "You'll come to the office Monday morning at 8 a.m. You'll bring all documentation related to your communications with Riverside. You'll prepare a full disclosure of every promise you made, every representation you gave about your authority and position. And then, you'll face the consequences of your choices. You're going to fire me. I'm going to follow proper protocol, I corrected. There will be an investigation. HR will be involved. Depending on what they find, there will be appropriate action taken. That's how we handle misconduct at Meridian Global, regardless of who's involved or why. Please. 8 a.m., Vivian. Don't be late. And don't contact Marcus tonight. In fact, I'd suggest you don't contact him at all. You're going to need to demonstrate that you can separate your personal life from your professional obligations. This weekend would be an excellent time to start. I ended the call before she could respond, setting my phone down on the desk with a decisive click. Through the window, I could see my reflection ghosted against the darkness outside a woman in her late 30s. Successful, respected, betrayed, but not broken. Never broken. Marcus thought he'd been clever, cultivating a relationship with a younger woman while keeping his wife comfortable and complacent. He'd underestimated me, assumed that because I didn't immediately confront the affair, I was either ignorant or resigned to it. He'd forgotten that silence wasn't acceptance. It was strategy. And Vivian, talented, ambitious, ultimately foolish Vivian, had learned the wrong lessons from whatever business books she'd been reading. She'd thought access to power was the same as having power. She'd thought proximity to influence was the same as earning influence. She'd thought sleeping with the CFO's husband would give her an edge in a company where the CMO controlled her future. They were both about to learn otherwise. I finished my whiskey and headed upstairs, suddenly exhausted. Tomorrow would bring Diana's visit, our strategy session, the careful planning of Monday's execution. Tomorrow, Marcus would come home, and we'd have the conversation he'd been dreading. Tomorrow, the facade of our marriage would officially crumble. But tonight, I slept soundly for the first time in months, secure in the knowledge that I held all the cards, controlled all the moves, and had the moral and professional high ground. Revenge wasn't about screaming or crying or dramatic confrontations. Revenge was about cold calculation, perfect timing, and letting your enemies destroy themselves with their own arrogance. Monday morning would be very interesting indeed. Diana arrived at my house at exactly 9 a.m. Sunday morning, carrying 2 coffees and a leather portfolio that I knew contained copies of every relevant document from the marketing department's files. She'd been with Meridian Global longer than I had, worked her way up from junior analyst to VP through sheer competence and political savvy. More importantly, she was loyal not to the company, but to the principles of merit and fairness that I tried to uphold. "You look surprisingly well-rested for someone whose husband publicly introduced his mistress last night," she said by way of greeting, handing me a coffee as she breezed into my kitchen. "I've known for 3 months," I reminded her, settling onto one of the bar stools at the island. "Last night was just confirmation that Marcus has lost whatever minimal judgment he once possessed." Diana shook her head, opening her portfolio. "Introducing his girlfriend to his wife at the country club. I mean, the sheer audacity. Does he have a death wish, or is he really that stupid? Both, I think. He's convinced himself that because I haven't confronted him directly, I'm either oblivious or too afraid of divorce to do anything. He doesn't understand that I've been building a case. Speaking of which, Diana pulled out a thick folder. Here's everything on Vivian Chen's Q3 projects. Or should I say, everything she was supposed to be working on versus what she actually delivered. I flipped through the documents, my coffee growing cold as I absorbed the details. It was worse than I'd thought. Vivian's performance had deteriorated sharply over the summer, right around the time her affair with Marcus had begun. Client presentations delivered late, market analysis reports containing basic errors, team meetings she'd skipped without explanation. "The Hanover pitch," Diana said, pointing to one particularly damning file. Vivian was lead on that, remember? Tech startup, huge potential account. She completely botched the presentation because she hadn't actually prepared. Just recycled slides from an old pitch deck and hoped no one would notice. We lost that account. We lost that account, Diana confirmed. And Vivian blamed it on the client being not ready for innovative thinking. But I talked to their CMO afterward. He said our presentation was generic, unprofessional, and showed no understanding of their business model. I made a note on my legal pad. What else? For the next hour, Diana walked me through a catalog of Vivian's failures and shortcuts. Missed deadlines. Plagiarized content in several marketing briefs, content she'd lifted from competitors' websites and tried to pass off as original strategy. False reporting about client meetings she'd claimed to have but hadn't actually attended. How did this not come up in her quarterly review? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Diana's expression turned grim. Because Marcus interceded. He went to Tom Chen, no relation to Vivian, ironically, in HR, and suggested that Vivian's review be delayed due to special projects she was working on. Tom didn't think anything of it because Marcus is CFO, and sometimes executives do work on confidential initiatives that affect review timing. Special projects, I repeated flatly. Let me guess, these special projects had no documentation, no paper trail, no deliverables. Nothing. I checked. There's no record of Vivian being assigned to anything outside her normal portfolio. I sat back, processing this information. Marcus hadn't just been having an affair. He'd been actively interfering with company HR processes to protect his girlfriend from the consequences of her failing performance. That was a serious violation of corporate governance, possibly even grounds for his own termination. Does Tom know yet? I asked. About Marcus and Vivian? Not from me. But you know how office gossip works. Someone from the club last night has probably already spread the story. By Monday morning, everyone's going to know that the CFO's wife caught him introducing his mistress. I smiled grimly. Good. Let them talk. Office gossip will actually work in our favor. It'll be impossible for Marcus or Vivian to claim this is personal retaliation when everyone already knows what happened. Diana pulled out another document, this one marked confidential. Now for the really interesting part. I did some digging into the Riverside situation. Called in a favor from Michelle in legal to pull any communications Vivian had sent that might create contractual obligations. And Vivian sent 17 emails to various contacts at Riverside over the past 6 weeks. In those emails, she represented herself as Director of Luxury Brand Development, a position that doesn't exist. She promised specific deliverables with dates and pricing. She even sent a mock-up contract that used our company letterhead and legal formatting. I felt my stomach tighten. Please tell me she didn't forge someone's signature. She used an electronic signature that says, approved by Meridian Global Marketing Division. Vague enough to seem official, specific enough to convince Riverside they were dealing with authorized representatives. That's fraud, I said quietly. Actual, criminal fraud. Michelle thinks so too. She's prepared to recommend we involve legal authorities if Riverside decides to pursue action against us for breach of implied contract. I stood up, pacing to the window. This was bigger than I'd realized. Vivian hadn't just violated company policy, she'd potentially exposed Meridian Global to serious legal liability. And Marcus, by encouraging her to think bigger and pursue deals without proper authorization, had made himself complicit. Does Michelle know about Marcus's involvement? I asked. Not yet. But she'll need to be informed if this goes to a formal investigation. I turned back to Diana. Here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., I'm meeting with Vivian to gather her documentation on Riverside. You'll be there as a witness. At 9 a.m., we're going to HR to file a formal complaint about professional misconduct, not the affair, just the work violations. At 10 a.m., I'm meeting with Michelle in legal to discuss the implications of the Riverside situation. And Marcus? Marcus is meeting with me tomorrow afternoon. By then, he'll have heard about the formal complaint against Vivian. He'll be angry, probably accusatory. He'll claim I'm using my position to punish her for the affair. I smiled coldly. But he won't be able to explain away his own interference with her performance review, or his encouragement of her unauthorized business dealings. Diana nodded slowly. You're not just firing her. You're building a case. I'm protecting the company, I corrected. And yes, I'm building a case. Because when this is over, I want it clear to everyone, the board, the staff, our clients, that what happened to Vivian Chen was the result of her own choices and misconduct, not personal revenge from a scorned wife. Even though it's definitely also personal revenge from a scorned wife, Diana pointed out with a slight smile. Even though, I agreed, the beauty of being right is that your motivations become irrelevant. Vivian broke the rules. Marcus abused his position. Those are facts, regardless of why I chose to act on them now. We spent another hour going through the documentation, making sure every piece of evidence was properly organized and dated. By the time Diana left, I had 3 thick folders ready for Monday's meetings, one for Vivian, one for HR, one for legal. Marcus returned home in the late afternoon, his usual confidence replaced by wary tension. He found me in the living room, reading a book on corporate crisis management that I'd strategically left on the coffee table. We need to talk, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. Yes, I agreed, marking my place and setting the book aside. We do. He sat down across from me, not beside me. The physical distance spoke volumes about where we actually stood. Last night was a mistake. I shouldn't have introduced you like that. It was inappropriate. Inappropriate, I repeated, tasting the word. Is that what we're calling it? Not betrayal, not infidelity, not humiliation, just inappropriate? Catherine, how long have you been sleeping with her, Marcus? And please don't insult me by lying. I have credit card statements, text messages, and photographs from a private investigator. His face went pale. You hired an investigator? Of course I did. The moment I suspected something, I documented everything. That's what rational people do when they discover their spouse is cheating. They gather evidence for the inevitable divorce. Divorce. He said it like he hadn't considered the possibility. Like he'd thought he could have both his wife and his mistress, his comfortable home and his exciting affair, without ever facing consequences. What did you think would happen? I asked, genuinely curious. Did you imagine I'd just accept this? Play the dutiful wife while you paraded your girlfriend around town? I thought. He trailed off, then tried again. Vivian and I, it's not just physical. We connected on a different level. She understands my ambitions, my vision for where my career could go. Your career, I interrupted, my voice sharp. Let's talk about your career. Let's talk about how the CFO of Meridian Global interfered with HR processes to protect his girlfriend from a negative performance review. Let's talk about how you encouraged that girlfriend to pursue unauthorized business deals that could expose the company to legal liability. His jaw clenched. I was mentoring her, helping her develop professionally. You were abusing your position. There's a difference. You're just angry because she's younger and more ambitious than you've been in years, he shot back. When's the last time you took a real risk, Catherine? When's the last time you pushed boundaries instead of just maintaining the status quo? I stood up, my book falling to the floor unnoticed. I pushed boundaries when I built the marketing division that Vivian is currently working in. I took risks when I landed the Thornburg account last year, the one that accounts for 20% of our revenue. And I'm taking a risk right now by not immediately reporting your interference with HR to the board. That got his attention. You wouldn't I? Marcus, you seem to be under the impression that I need you more than I need my integrity. That I'll protect you to avoid embarrassment or financial hardship. But here's the reality. I make more money than you do. This house is in my name, purchased with my signing bonus. My retirement accounts are separate. We have a prenuptial agreement that heavily favors the wronged party in case of infidelity. I moved closer, watching the color drain from his face as he realized how thoroughly he'd underestimated me. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. Tomorrow morning, I'm addressing Vivian's professional misconduct through proper HR channels. Her affair with you will be mentioned only as context for how she gained access to information and resources she shouldn't have had. You'll be asked about your role in facilitating her violations. And then we'll see what the board thinks about a CFO who lets his personal life compromise his professional judgment. You're going to destroy both our careers over this? His voice had risen, panic creeping in. I'm not destroying anything. You both did that yourselves. I'm simply ensuring that the consequences of your choices are appropriately applied. Marcus stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger. Fine. You want to play it this way? Go ahead. But don't expect me to make the divorce easy. I'll fight you for everything this house. Your retirement, your reputation. With what money? I asked calmly. The prenup specifies that in cases of proven infidelity, marital assets are divided 90-10 in favor of the faithful spouse. Your share would barely cover a security deposit on an apartment. And as for my reputation, I smiled without humor. I'm the wronged wife who caught her husband with his mistress. Public sympathy is entirely on my side. He stared at me, seeming to see me clearly for the first time in years. When did you become so cold? I'm not cold, Marcus. I'm just finally done being warm to someone who's been betraying me for months. There's a difference. He left that night, throwing clothes into a suitcase while muttering about staying at a hotel. I watched from the doorway of our bedroom, my bedroom, now feeling nothing but a strange sense of relief. The waiting was over. The pretending was finished. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. After he was gone, I called my divorce attorney, a shark of a woman named Patricia Madrigal who'd handled several high-profile executive divorces. She listened to my summary, asked pointed questions about documentation and assets, and assured me that with the evidence I'd gathered, the proceedings would be straightforward. One thing, she said before hanging up. Be very careful about anything that happens with Vivian Chen at work. If Marcus's lawyers can make it look like you're abusing your corporate position to retaliate for the affair, it could complicate things. Everything I'm doing is by the book, I assured her. HR procedures, corporate protocols, proper documentation. Her misconduct is real and independently verifiable. Good. Keep it that way. The high road isn't just moral, it's strategic. I ended the call and sat in the silence of my empty house. Tomorrow would set events in motion that couldn't be stopped. Vivian would lose her job. Marcus would lose his marriage and possibly his position. And I would lose the life I'd built over 12 years. The comfortable fiction of a successful marriage, the image we'd projected to friends and colleagues. But I would gain something more valuable. My self-respect, my integrity. The knowledge that when betrayal came, I hadn't responded with tears or hysteria, but with calculated precision. I would show everyone who'd watched Marcus parade Vivian around last night that the quiet wife they'd pitied was actually the most dangerous person in the room. I slept poorly that night, my mind racing through scenarios and contingencies. By the time dawn broke, I was already dressed and prepared, armored in my most severe suit black, expensive, authoritative, war paint Diana had once called professional attire. Today, I was going to war. The drive to the office was familiar, calming in its routine. I arrived at 7:30, an hour before my meeting with Vivian, and went straight to my office to review my notes one final time. Diana arrived at 7:45, looking as grimly determined as I felt. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready," I confirmed. At precisely 8 a.m., Vivian knocked on my office door. She looked terrible, exhausted, anxious, her usual polished appearance replaced by obvious stress. She carried a folder, presumably her documentation on Riverside, and sat in the chair across from my desk without being invited. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," she began, her voice shaky. "I didn't agree," I corrected. "I instructed you to be here. There's a difference. Diana Wu, VP of Marketing, will be joining us as a witness to this conversation." Diana entered on cue, closing the door behind her and taking a seat beside Vivian. The younger woman's eyes darted between us, her panic visibly mounting. "Let's begin," I said, opening my own folder. "You're here to provide complete documentation of your communications and commitments regarding the Riverside Development Group. Please place your materials on my desk." Vivian complied, her hands trembling as she slid the folder across. I opened it, scanning the contents. Emails, meeting notes, a timeline of her interactions. The conference room on Monday morning felt sterile and unforgiving under fluorescent lights. Across from me sat Vivian Chen, flanked by Tom Chen from HR and Michelle Rodriguez from Legal. Diana occupied the chair to my right, her presence both support and witness. The folder of Vivian's Riverside documentation lay open between us like evidence at a trial. "Miss Chen," Michelle began, her voice professionally neutral, "can you explain why you represented yourself as Director of Luxury Brand Development in these communications when no such position exists at Meridian Global?" Vivian's composure, already fragile, cracked further. Marcus said that role was being created, that I was being considered for it. I thought, "You thought incorrectly," I interrupted. "No such position was approved by the marketing leadership team or the board. There are no budget allocations for it, no job description, no posting. It doesn't exist." Tom made notes on his tablet, his expression carefully blank. "And these pricing commitments you made to Riverside? Who authorized those figures?" "No one authorized them," Diana said, sliding another document across the table. "The pricing structure Vivian promised is 30% below our standard rates for comparable services. Delivering on those promises would lose the company money." Vivian's face had gone pale. "Marcus said we needed to be competitive, that undercutting the market was how you build relationships." "Marcus Thornton is the chief financial officer," Michelle said sharply. "He has no authority over marketing, pricing strategies, client negotiations, or service delivery. Miss Chen, did it not occur to you to verify these instructions with your actual supervisor?" The silence stretched. We all knew why Vivian hadn't verified anything. She'd been too busy enjoying the thrill of having a powerful man's attention, too caught up in the fantasy that sleeping with the CFO's husband gave her insider access and special privileges. "I trusted him," she finally whispered. "That was your first mistake," I said quietly. "Your second was misrepresenting your authority to an external partner. Your third was creating fraudulent documentation using company letterhead. Shall I continue?" Tom cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thornton, I need to ask, are you pursuing this complaint because of Miss Chen's personal relationship with your husband?" I'd been waiting for this question. "I'm pursuing this complaint because Miss Chen violated multiple company policies, exposed Meridian Global to potential legal liability, and demonstrated a pattern of professional misconduct that would concern me regardless of her personal life. The affair with my husband is relevant only insofar as it explains how she gained access to advice and encouragement that led her to believe she could bypass proper protocols. But you were aware of the relationship before this?" Tom pressed. "I was. And I was also monitoring Miss Chen's performance closely as a result. What I found was troubling enough to warrant this formal complaint. Diana, can you distribute the performance summary?" Diana passed around copies of the document we'd prepared, 3 months of missed deadlines, substandard work, client complaints, and protocol violations. The evidence was damning. And crucially, It was all dated and documented by multiple sources, not just me. Michelle studied the papers with a deepening frown. Miss Chen, I'm also concerned about what appears to be plagiarized content in several of your marketing briefs. This analysis from the Henderson proposal, she held up a highlighted page, is nearly identical to material published by the Branson Agency 6 months ago. Vivian's eyes widened. I used it as inspiration. You copied it, verbatim, Diana corrected. 43 sentences, identical except for client names. That's not inspiration. That's intellectual property theft. I watched Vivian crumble, piece by piece. Part of me felt a savage satisfaction. Another part, smaller but persistent, felt almost sorry for her. She'd been talented once, genuinely promising, but she'd taken shortcuts, trusted the wrong person, and convinced herself that charm and connections could substitute for competence and integrity. Tom closed his folder with finality. Miss Chen, based on this evidence, I'm recommending immediate suspension pending a full investigation. You'll be placed on administrative leave as of this afternoon. Your access to company systems will be revoked, and you'll be expected to return all company property by end of business today. Please. Vivian looked directly at me, tears streaming down her face. Please, Mrs. Thornton. I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you, but I'm 28 years old. If you fire me like this, my career is over before it really started. Please. The room waited for my response. This was the moment Marcus had warned me about. Don't use your position to punish her because you're jealous. But this wasn't jealousy. This was justice. Miss Chen, I said carefully, I hired you because I saw potential, real talent, and somewhere along the way, you chose to develop a relationship with my husband instead of developing your skills. You chose to take shortcuts instead of putting in the work. You chose to lie to clients instead of being honest about your limitations. Those were your choices, not mine. The consequences are yours as well. Michelle stood. Mrs. Thornton, Mr. Chen, Miss Wu, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Miss Chen, someone from HR will contact you this afternoon with next steps. Please gather your belongings and surrender your access badge and laptop to security. Vivian stumbled from the room. Her career at Meridian Global effectively over. The investigation would take weeks, but the outcome was inevitable. She'd be terminated for cause, which meant no severance, no positive reference, and a black mark that would follow her to every future job interview. Diana exhaled slowly once the door closed. That was brutal. That was necessary, I corrected, but my hands were shaking slightly as I gathered my papers. Necessary didn't mean easy. Tom lingered as Michelle departed. Mrs. Thornton, there's one more issue we need to address. Marcus Thornton's interference with Miss Chen's performance review process. That's a serious governance violation. I'm aware. The board will need to be notified. They'll likely want to conduct their own investigation into whether the CFO's personal relationship compromised his professional judgment. I met his eyes steadily. Do what you need to do, Tom. I'm not asking for special treatment, and I'm not trying to protect Marcus. If he violated corporate governance, the board should know. Tom nodded, respect flickering across his features. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you're going through this. Both the personal situation and the professional complications. After he left, Diana turned to me. How are you holding up? I'll be better once this day is over, I admitted. Marcus is supposed to meet me at 3. That should be interesting. Want me to stick around? Moral support? No. This conversation needs to happen between us. But thank you. The hours until 3 o'clock crawled by. I tried to focus on regular work budget reviews, campaign approvals, team meetings, but my mind kept circling back to the inevitable confrontation. Marcus would be furious. He'd accuse me of vindictiveness, of using my position for personal revenge. of destroying Vivian's career out of spite. And he'd be partly right. I was angry. I did want revenge. But I'd channeled that anger into something productive. Protecting my company from employees who couldn't separate personal relationships from professional obligations. If I happened to enjoy watching them face consequences, well, that was just a bonus. Marcus arrived at my office at 3:15, his face thunderous. "What the hell did you do?" "I filed a formal complaint about professional misconduct," I said calmly, not rising to his anger. As was my obligation as CMO when I became aware of serious policy violations. "You destroyed her." He slammed his hand on my desk. "Vivian called me sobbing. She's been suspended. She's losing her job, all because you're jealous." "I'm not jealous, Marcus. I'm disappointed. In both of you." I remained seated, refusing to let his theatrics intimidate me. "Vivian broke rules. She lied to clients. She plagiarized content. She created fraudulent documents. Those are fireable offenses regardless of who she was sleeping with. You could have handled it privately. You could have given her a chance to fix things. The way you handled her performance review privately, by interfering with HR processes to protect your girlfriend from accountability." I pulled out another folder. "Tom Chen has already notified the board about your governance violations. They're opening an investigation." The color drained from his face. "You're trying to get me fired." "I'm not trying to do anything. I simply answered questions truthfully when HR asked about the timeline of events. You interfered with an employee review. You encouraged unauthorized business activities. You compromised your professional judgment by mixing personal relationships with business decisions. Those are facts, Marcus. Not opinions, not revenge facts." He sank into the chair, his anger deflating into something closer to desperation. "This is my career, Catherine. Meridian Global is everything I've worked for." "It was everything I worked for, too," I said quietly. "This marriage, this life we built, this reputation we had, and you threw it away for a 28-year-old who was using you as much as you were using her." "I love her," he said, and for the first time, he sounded sincere. "Maybe you do," I acknowledged. "But love doesn't excuse professional misconduct. It doesn't justify lying to your wife or manipulating corporate processes. Love, Marcus, is supposed to make you better. What you did, what you both did, made you worse." We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside my office, the normal rhythm of business continued. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, colleagues discussing quarterly projections. Life went on, even as individual lives fell apart. "What happens now?" Marcus asked finally. "Now? You'll face the board's investigation. You'll probably be censured at minimum, possibly demoted or terminated depending on what they find. Vivian will be fired, and you and I will get divorced." "Just like that? 12 years gone?" "Not just like that," I corrected. "Slowly, over months of lies and betrayals and late-night hotel visits. This is just the moment when we stop pretending." Marcus stood, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "For what it's worth, I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. Intentionally or not, the damage is the same." I stood as well, facing him across the desk that separated us in more ways than one. "I loved you once, Marcus. I built a life with you. I trusted you, and you chose Vivian over all of that. So no, I don't accept your apology, and I don't forgive you. But I also don't hate you. I just don't care anymore." That seemed to hurt him more than any accusation. He left without another word, and I watched him go, feeling the weight of 12 years lifting from my shoulders. 3 months later, I sat in Patricia Madrigal's office, signing the final divorce papers. The settlement had been exactly as the prenup specified. I kept the house, the majority of our shared assets, and my professional reputation intact. Marcus kept his job barely after the board's investigation concluded with a formal censure and 6 months of reduced duties. He'd been humiliated but not destroyed. Vivian Chen had been terminated 2 weeks after our meeting, the investigation confirming every violation we'd documented. I'd heard through office gossip that she'd moved to Chicago, taken a job at a smaller firm, and ended her relationship with Marcus shortly after losing her position. She was young enough to recover, skilled enough to rebuild. I hoped she'd learned from the experience. That's it, Patricia said, sliding the documents across her desk. You're officially single again. I signed my name with a steady hand, feeling nothing but relief. What happens to his portion of the settlement? It'll be processed within 30 days. Though honestly, 10% of your marital assets barely covers his legal fees. He's not walking away with much. Good, I said, and meant it. Walking out of Patricia's office into the spring sunshine, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Drinks tonight? Celebrate your freedom? I smiled, typing back. Absolutely. 7 o'clock? Done. And Catherine, I'm proud of you. The months of careful planning, painful confrontations, and professional reckonings had been exhausting. But I'd emerged on the other side with my integrity intact, my career stronger than ever, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd handled betrayal with precision rather than hysteria. At the office the next morning, I convened a meeting with my marketing leadership team. We had new campaigns to develop, clients to impress, and a department culture to reinforce. The Vivian Chen situation had sent a clear message throughout Meridian Global. Talent and ambition were valued, but only when paired with integrity and respect for proper procedures. Before we begin, I said as the team settled around the conference table, I want to address what happened over the past few months. We lost a team member due to serious misconduct. It was handled through proper channels, investigated thoroughly, and resolved appropriately. I expect that same standard of professional behavior from everyone in this room. Merit, not connections, determines success here. Are we clear? Heads nodded around the table. Diana caught my eye and smiled slightly. Good. Now let's talk about Q4 projections. The meeting flowed smoothly, ideas bouncing around the room with the energy I'd been missing during the months of Marcus and Vivian's affair. This was what I'd built, what I'd protected. A team of talented people who understood that shortcuts led nowhere worth going. That evening, alone in my house, no longer ours, I poured myself a glass of wine and settled onto the back patio. The garden Marcus had never cared about bloomed with late summer flowers, vibrant and alive. Beyond the fence, the suburb hummed with ordinary life. Children playing, couples walking dogs, neighbors chatting over property lines. My phone stayed silent. No angry texts from Marcus. No pleading calls from Vivian. Just peaceful, blessed quiet. I'd won, if you could call it winning. I'd protected my company, ended my marriage on favorable terms, and ensured that the people who'd betrayed me faced appropriate consequences. But victory felt less triumphant than I'd imagined during those long nights of planning and documentation. Mostly, I just felt free. Free from a marriage that had become a performance. Free from a husband who'd valued his ego over our partnership. Free from the exhausting work of pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. The revenge I'd enacted cold, calculated, ruthlessly effective had been necessary. But it was the freedom that mattered more. The ability to move forward without looking back, to build something new without the weight of betrayal dragging me down. My career would continue. Meridian Global's marketing division would thrive under leadership that valued merit over manipulation. And I would heal, eventually, from the wounds Marcus had inflicted. But first, I would sit in my garden, drink my wine, and savor the satisfaction of a plan perfectly executed. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, methodical, and devastatingly thorough. Sometimes it looked like HR investigations and corporate governance reviews. Sometimes it tasted like expensive wine drunk alone in a garden that finally belonged only to you. I raised my glass to the setting sun, toasting 12 years ended and whatever came next. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. And after months of careful strategy and painful reckonings, that felt like victory enough. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.